Awesome. Am I supposed to kick this off?
You are.
I'll kick this off. Great. Well, it was funny. I was joking before. I'm like, why don't we have drinks in our hands? We got water up here. Yeah. Does anyone want one? Just kidding. But no, I'm excited about this, and thanks to you all for having me to moderate this. You know, there's a lot of places we could bring this. Another topic is the future of media investment. But I wanted to kick this off since we're at CES, and I honestly haven't seen much of the floor yet. But what I've heard is there's nothing interesting here this year.
Nothing.
Nothing. Like, I haven't heard of one thing that stuck out. And I mean, maybe I've missed something. I mean, the Uber helicopter's kind of neat. But what have you guys seen? I mean,
I haven't been to the floor at all. I heard two things. That people walking to screens can see different ads depending on what their proclivities or personal likes are. That was one thing. And then a TV screen that goes horizontal and vertical. So those are the two things, the only contact that I've had with the floor.
Yeah, so screens are getting better.
I think, you know, the screen thing, that gender recognition and serving ads based on who you are and what you look like has been around, but it's really advanced more now. Interesting partnership that was announced today, I think this morning, with Sleep Number and the Mayo Clinic, where, you know, Sleep Number, through their high-tech beds, they're really a technology company that monitors everything in your system. And they announced a partnership with the Mayo Clinic for research on the values of sleep and what that does for you. And so I think you're seeing tech partnerships moving into brands, and then joint partnerships with other companies that are working together. And I thought the Sleep Number one was really interesting.
I just came back from Tech West a few years ago. But by the way, I'm on a panel with 3 celebrities. I'm not one. I'm Lou Paskalis with Bank of America. I just came back from Tech West a couple of years ago. We decided we're not going to the North Hall anymore. We don't need to see 60-inch TVs. And Tech West is a little grittier. It's where, you know, a lot of the international companies come. A lot of the booths are a single person. A couple of things we saw. Actually, P&G was in Tech West, which is interesting. They had a device that would look at your skin and see blemishes, and in real time scan it, and it's taking 6,000 photos a second, and in real time it's figuring out a pigmentation, and in no time your skin is unblemished, whether it's here or here. And I'm not sure if I'm the target audience, but I am definitely a buyer. It's $599 with a 3-month supply of the serum, and then after that it's a subscription service. And I think it's going to I think it's priced to move, right? I think it's the free razor model almost. So I was impressed by that. There are a variety of predictive analytics companies that are, as Bill was saying, connected to facial recognition. We saw one down there. It had an odd name. I apologize, I don't remember it. But it could, in 2 minutes, predict everything from just by taking a video of you, predict your gastro health, and other likely health issues. And I said to one of my colleagues who was standing next to me, I'm like, well, there's the insurance application of the future, folks, right there, because they're just gonna go, no, and that's that. You'll never know why.
Gosh,
so, yeah.
Did you pass?
I did. I surprisingly, I did.
But so you said you
Clearly
haven't.
there's something more to be done with the technology, yeah.
But you've not been to the floor yet,
Not
and
at all.
I've only been to the floor for 1 or 2 client meetings.
No, you
It's
don't
crazy.
come to CES
Yeah,
to the
for
floor.
that.
And it was
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer, you know, that we don't have time. Like,
No, but that's the thing with
Yeah.
all conferences. You know, Davos is no different. You just don't go to what was originally the intention. Cannes is the same. You know, who goes into the main conference hall anymore? Is everything around it, which is a mistake because they become too big. I mean, this is how many people here?
180,000.
Yeah.
Well, 100,000.
175. It's 2.5 Burning Mans or 2 Burning Mans. Yeah.
Which would be more interesting if we all just went to Burning Man.
Well, Burning Man's no different actually. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's just gone away from its original purpose.
And Martin's done a good job in trashing Cannes before, and I agree. No, but I agree. It used to be a celebration of creativity. Yeah. The media companies have kidnapped Cannes. Clients are captive, have all these meetings, and you're losing the flavor and the soul of what that was supposed to be about.
Well, if you remember, the original one was Roger Hatchell, the French guy, and it was the French creative community getting together for a holiday in the south of France in June. I mean, it makes no sense to be, you know, you get overcharged, it's overpriced, it's overcrowded, it's the wrong time of the year, it's too hot. It should be February or March when there's a capacity instead of the nonsense
Yeah.
that we have to go through.
Well, and I think it's not only nonsensical. I think it's dangerous. And the reason I say that is like innovation is coming from the periphery now. As much as Google and some of these other companies are huge tech companies, it's the small little companies that you see like at a Tech West or that are really driving innovation in the industry. And we're getting the curated tour from the big vendors who have the nice dinner. And if you remember that scene in Trading Places, if you're old, remember whiskey, cigars, and don't go to the floor, come to our suite. There's nothing to see there. That's bad. That's dangerous for our industry.
It's good, but we can't kill Cannes yet because fingers crossed I'm going for the first time this year. So
For the first time
for
ever?
the first time, they didn't let me go before. No, I'm kidding.
Who didn't let you go?
Well, normally we send in my previous job, we'd usually send our brand reporters, and I was a tech reporter, so I always went to this thing or South by Southwest. But now I get to go to everything, which is kind of nice. Yeah, and so that'll be fun. So we can kill Ken next year.
Yeah, but these events all become networking events. Effectively, the reason that we come is not to go to the floor, actually, because we'll see the technology in some way, shape, or form. It's a very efficient use of time, is the theory, and that's probably in reality it is too. All these events, but you can spend your whole life in events. The whole of January. Since they moved the automobile show in Detroit to the summer, which is the first year, but the whole of my January, both at WPP and S4, is taken up with conferences. So that 1/12 of the year is blown right at the very beginning.
That's a way to kick off the year, right? Yeah, well, I will recant my initial statement a little bit. I did, now that you guys talked about P&G, I did see a couple interesting things. Like, I tried their new toothbrush, which is actually kind of neat, where it maps your mouth, and it was interesting how they're thinking more about how in the future, and this is maybe a good question kind of to move things into more thinking about investment in the future, but in the future, that might also help them to not rely as much on advertising if they can just engage people through toothbrushes or baby supplies and stuff like that.
First party data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that was interesting. To get to sit in the Lamborghini that Alexa powers now, that was kind of interesting. And I'm trying the brain-computer interface tomorrow for the first time. So I've gotten to see a little bit, but it's still, but nothing's really bubbled to the
It's
top.
too big though, isn't it? I mean, you can't take it in. It's just overpowering.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
I think Martin's point about first-party data is interesting. The CPG companies, the companies historically that don't have that first-party data are seeing what's happened in DTC, and they're developing devices. It used to be the razor handle would get you to buy the razors. Well, now it's the toothbrush that's actually going to give them data about utilization, and it's going to give them a pathway back, a backhaul, if you will, of data, and that's what they're going to need to compete. And so I think
but ironically, it's a bricks and clicks strategy. So the two examples that stick in my mind, Nespresso, which we were involved in with, or Nestle with Starbucks, when they bought the Starbucks franchise for $7 billion, which was really, I think I've got this right, and it's worth just taking a second to describe the story, because I think the story is really interesting. So Nestle were negotiating with Amazon over their capsules before Starbucks. And Amazon, it took 18 months, I'm told, to come to a deal on data. Nestle put the capsules on the platform, Amazon reneges on the data. Nestle walks away. They then reopen the negotiation with Starbucks for the capsules, for the Starbucks capsules. It's a deal in perpetuity. So I wonder whether anybody has ever done, this will last
Bernie
forever.
Ecclestone did
forever.
that.
The second thing is that they get the retail franchise, not the big box franchise of Starbucks, but the small one. So when you go into a Barnes & Noble, you say, we proudly serve, they get that franchise. So for example, in Brazil, 200 million coffee drinking people, I think there were 100 big box stores of Starbucks at that time. So they have the retail rights, for those smaller size and smaller menu stores, plus the capsules in perpetuity. They go back to Amazon and say, now what? And Amazon succumbs. So it's a really good example of the first. So that's one thing. And the other thing about Nestle is Nespresso stores. So like Christian Dior perfumes in China has 200 stores. So it's a bricks and clicks. So to Lou's point, you do the first party data to get the relationship, but you do it not just online or whatever through online sales or on the platforms. You do it through stores that you control too, and you control the consumer relationship. So bricks and clicks.
Yeah. So how does, with that in mind, thinking about retail, it seems like retail is something that a lot of people are thinking about this next year, increasing, whether it's in digital displays or whatever else, or like you guys talked about, it's
Yeah, I think retail, and we live in Manhattan, and you're starting to see streets where, there was vibrant retail 5 or 10 years ago, and all of a sudden it's light use or not use, or it's being converted to ground floor residential, which I don't recommend in Manhattan. I actually think it's going to be much more of an experiential piece. When I was a kid, my mom would go to the Sears catalog store and she would try the vacuum or check out the refrigerator, and if she liked it, she'd order it, and 4 days later it would come, because we lived in a small town. I think that's what's going to happen again, where you're going to have forward inventory, and you're going to say, yeah, this is great, or this experience is great, or there's some live performance there. That's a cool by association moment for the brand. But I think the production of retail sales coming out of the store versus being attributed to the store from an experience standpoint is going to flip. And I think more and more people are going to look at store as experience. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you go further out. First of all, we're going to move into a virtual world. There's no doubt about that. Certain bricks and mortars are certainly going to become extinct. But think about 5 years from now. You have a kitchen in your house, you have a dining room, you have a living room. You're going to have a virtual room that you're going to go into. You can go to any store, you can go to any showroom, you can go to any sporting event, and you can experience that and shop and buy right from there in your virtual showroom. Unfortunately, I think Amazon is going to own a lot of that showroom. And I was with some venture capitalists, and they told me that if Amazon is getting into your business, get out. And if but if Amazon isn't getting into your business, get out.
Yeah, Jesus.
Okay? Yeah.
So
That's an extreme of where the world could be going, in terms of going into that room and experiencing anything you want and shopping for anything.
But I wouldn't be so negative on the physical retail. That bricks and clicks strategy, ironically, so Christian Dior has their 200 stores in China, Nestle, Nespresso. So one of the things that's happened here at CES in the last 24, 48 hours is I'm aware of 2 situations where packaged goods companies are now working with major retailers and Google on data. So the war for control of data, which is the biggest threat to our clients, is Amazon. So the walls in the walled gardens have gone up. Amazon, that Nestle example, is a good example of the fight. But we had just give you one example to Bill's point. We were briefed on unusual for us, on a global media review. And at the media review, I said, are you worried about Amazon? I said, Amazon is a key part of this review. So your knowledge of Amazon, this was on a Monday, literally in London on a Monday. Your knowledge of Amazon is absolutely key in relation to the RFP. So we said, I was with the Mighty Hive Media Monks people, they said, well, aren't you worried about Amazon competing? No. The following morning, on the Tuesday morning, I walk into Amazon in London to see the head of creative there, who reports the head of creative in Seattle. And I look at my phone and it says Amazon, it was in the alcohol category, Amazon Premium Gin. So Premium Gin, Lady Gaga Cosmetics, and Allbirds Shoes, 3 examples, and to your point, where they are going to eviscerate.
Yeah.
So this is the challenge. Now, how do you deal with that? It's really tough.
How does the gin taste? Did you try it?
No.
Yeah. Well,
not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
And the genie is never going to be put back in the bottle. Right. I just don't see how it possibly can be.
Well, just to belabor the point, so Media Monks people went to the Amazon fashion studios, right? So we thought we were pretty good on technology, and we bought a thing called Caramel Pictures, which is robotic food and drink photography, movie and still. Our people went to the Amazon fashion studios in London. They were absolutely gobsmacked by the investment, the quality of the technology, and the number of fashion brands, Amazon fashion brands, they didn't know were Amazon fashion brands. So they are really coming full time.
Yeah, and so bolt that on to, and one of the experiments that Amazon is doing right now is using predictive analytics and getting a group of people to opt in, this is happening right now, to ship things to you that their predictive analytics suggest that you need right now. They're doing math on, they believe that they can get to a level of precision where they can eat the return costs and still drive incremental revenue because they know that you're going to be out of the toothpaste before you do, and it's not just a toothpaste, right? So you know what, I haven't bought pillows from Amazon for like 3 years. Ew. They send some pillows. I'm like, you know what, I needed new pillows. This is great, right? So I'm not in, I'm just suggesting, and I buy pillows more frequently. Yeah. But think about how do you compete with that? The convenience of, oh, I didn't realize I needed this, but I actually do. This is phenomenal, the loyalty. So who owns the customer is who owns the predictive analytics, and then you connect it to end-scale brands that are probably being created by Amazon for very bespoke segments. And it's going to be very hard for somebody to game around that, right?
So are you saying that Amazon is unstoppable?
I don't think, well, I think there's a problem to the east that will probably eventually stop Amazon. They sold $34.8 billion of goods in one day last month. That's unheard of. That's that little Alibaba company over there, right?
Company.
Yeah. And also, there are a lot of smart marketers out there who are doing everything they possibly can to beef up their arms race in DTC to compete with Amazon so that they don't have Amazon taking a big chunk out of their profits and their margins. And there are a lot of smart clients out there that I think are doing a better job, and they're all upping their game in that world. And
but I don't think the triopoly is beatable. I don't see it. I mean,
you think it is or isn't?
It's not. Yeah. I don't think the privacy thing is going to, famous last words, but I don't think the equivalent of GDPR here, state by state, I don't think we'll get a federal law, but state by state is going to crimp them. You mentioned Alibaba and Tencent. Well, the Chinese government is also worried about the growing power. I mean, did Jack Ma retire or was he pushed? Most Chinese you talk to say the latter.
Right.
So he got too powerful. He was more popular, they say, than President Xi. So, and that was one thing. So I think that the fearsome five, the only one that we've seen in the last, and we've mentioned this on the call that we had prepped for this, the only one, ByteDance.
By the way, being in a prep call with these guys, boy, anyhow.
ByteDance TikTok is the only one. But the figures, just to remind you of the figures are staggering, right? So Google last year probably was about 150 billion of ad revenues, digital ad revenues. Facebook will be about 65. Amazon probably around 15. We don't know. We think about 15, but growing fast. ByteDance is the only one that's made inroads 7. So the dominance of Google and Facebook,
but I think
with Amazon coming out.
I think respectfully, there's another dimension to that. I think the regulatory issue is, unfortunately, going to take longer to resolve itself, and I think we would all benefit from a common playing ground with privacy, permission, data, provenance, et cetera. But I think there is a techlash in this country, and I think that techlash is really coming out against surveillance capitalism, which is what these companies are really doing. And I think it's going to be the other side. I think companies with good corporate governance, and I'm dealing with this right now at Bank of America, are going to start to say, you know what? I don't think we should be doing business on that platform because it says a lot about how we invest our money. And as a bank, you want to keep a good weather eye on how you invest money as an advertiser because you're also investing your customers' money. And I've got a couple of platforms right now that I'm not alled to spend money on. I don't think I'm unique in it.
Which are?
Oh, no way. No way.
We can talk off the record later.
As those advertisers constrict, and I think DTC has been a more than ameliorating fact for those platforms because they don't have brand risk. They don't have reputational risk. They come up with a new name every 5 minutes, they strip the vowels out of it, and they've got a brand, and they don't have a 160-year history and 68 million customers, right? So I think, though, over time, it's going to be consumers and the perception that maybe that's not a good place for us to connect with them. And that hygiene issue has always been there. There's a lot of sites that we don't want to run on. I just think there's going to be more now.
Yeah, I think for every one that falls off, there's 5 other guys in line waiting to get on.
I hear that.
I do agree with the techlash, and I'm going to coin that statement from now on, Lou. I'm going to take that from you.
It's a John Patel term.
But I do agree with that. But there's just so much more demand out there, and it's going to take bold advertisers to say, no, we won't get there. And I will tell you, if you said to all the major marketers out there, we're going to turn Facebook off, and we're going to turn Google off, and we're going to turn YouTube off until they get their act together, they wouldn't just sit on the side and say, okay, we're gonna not participate. You go get your act together. It's a drug that they're living on.
They have changed, Bill. I mean, it's very unfair. be defending.
I didn't say they haven't changed.
No, listen. Facebook's hired 30,000 people at last figure. I can remember Google 10,000 people
Working on it.
It's affected their margins. Their attitude. Google has taken quite a conservative attitude to privacy. Now, just you said corporate governance, right? Corporate governance is killing companies. It's killing companies, right? You're not.
It's killing innovation.
You're an uncontrolled listed company. Google is a controlled listed company. Facebook's a controlled listed company in the listed sector, which is shrinking. It's shrinking both in the United States and UK. Clients are buying back more stock. You know, I saw, I won't say which CEO were being interviewed on, it was in the energy sector, a couple of days ago on CNBC Squawk Box, and the interviewer said, Kramer said, well, you know, oil price is up, you'll have more to distribute, what are you going to do with it? We're going to buy back more stock. It's a killer. Everything's shrinking, right? And why does it shrink? It's because the uncontrolled companies, the people running them, I'm not saying this is Bank of America, of course, the people running them are frightened to get kicked out. If they make long-term bets which affect short-term profitability, they're gone. That's the problem. And the other problem is private equity is too short-term. Private equity is the biggest growth, probably about 15% as best as I can determine of the capital sector, but growing rapidly. Every day they raise another $17 billion fund and they have to deploy it as quickly as possible. What's their average hold period? 5 years. Far too short. We have to make decisions about our companies that are 5, 10, 15-year decisions, not in that short period of time.
Well, I think
I think the surveillance, as you described it, is a killer. And I think it creates far too much short-termism, far too much conservatism, and that's one of the biggest
Can I just
problems.
make one quick point? I don't disagree. I actually think this is an attribution problem. We have really good fundamentals around the next 90 days or even in the next 12 months in terms of how did these stimuli drive outcomes that drove our business. But what Martin is talking about, and I think where this ultimately is going, is to build the kind of infrastructure we need to win in the future, leveraging data, leveraging predictive analytics, letting the models get smart, really running an ML model, you're going to need a 10 or 12-year gestation period. This is your point. We need to have a better attribution methodology that can score out at some level of sophistication. If we get this right, there's a $120 billion payout in year 2029, right? And we're not there yet because we don't have, in many cases, companies don't have a sort of customer lifetime value model. They don't really look at, they look at the world in terms of transactions, not relationships over time.
Only my company's had that.
I think I stole it from you, so. But.
No, but Bill is in a better position. A private company, controlled company, can make the long-term decision. He spends far too much on his real estate, but and has far too many square feet.
And his clothing, but what, you know.
But he can take that view, and it's the intelligent view. So in the private sector, the unlisted sector, or if you're going to be a public company, a controlled company, I think those are the uncontrolled. You see it with the holding companies. There's really 5 now because Avast has disappeared into Vivendi. But those 5 are uncontrolled. Despite that John Wren told me he's going to stay chairman, is he chairman?
Executive
CEO?
chairman.
Executive
Executive
chairman. He's
chairman.
executive chairman of Omnicom for forever. You heard that first here.
Well, I think your clients are hoping that you're going to do the same.
No. I don't know whether they're hoping. I will do it, but whether they agree or not is another question.
But I think, Lou, you raise a point about patience. Patience is a virtue. It's just not the world that marketers live in today. And I will tell you, with data and attribution and technology, it's made that patience even more impatient, even worse, because everybody's now measured on daily results. I can tell you how many clients we get daily results from. Daily. You go back 10 years ago, that was unheard of.
Yeah.
Daily results. Their report cards are Yeah, go
Play
ahead.
that string out, though. At some point, everybody has the same level of attribution, the same level of predictive analytics, and all you're doing is share shifting with your competitor. I'm investing this week, I'm getting better results. They're investing next week, they're winning the customer back. I think when you get to a plateau of sophistication around what you're talking about, then people are going to start to say, that, it's a cyclical model. Hey, we need to invest for the long term. Hey, you know what, this isn't working. We talk a lot about it at Bank of America, sustainable marketing. And sustainable marketing is investing in a relationship, not the transaction. And it's heretical, and it may be unique at this point in the world, but I think there will come a time where that story runs out, and people have to take I hope. Otherwise,
But the great thing about what's going on at the moment is what I call the marginal propensity to experiment is going up like that. So sometimes because marketers have become quite sophisticated, after the financial crisis in 2009, they've taken the first few years to sort everything out. They're taking back control. There's an eerie analogy to Brexit here. The clients want to take back control. They reduced their resources too much. The walls went up in the walled gardens. They realized they had to gain control. So that's the reason Nestle does its thing with Starbucks, et cetera, to compete with Amazon. But their willingness now at a fairly sophisticated level to experiment for us is extraordinarily energizing and attractive, because they will give us a project, land and expand. We really don't believe that it makes any sense for us to participate in 10-month reviews, which then become procurement fests or reverse bid auctions, right? There is, I said publicly, short the winner of Disney. What, correct?
Wow.
Yeah, I
pricing guarantees, inflation guarantees, and dare I say it, was there share shift?
well, I'm under NDA. But if you read what was written in the trades and you believe that, it is horrendous for the industry. Exactly. Because they are trading on money that's not theirs. And if I were a client involved with one of these companies, again, if it was in the trades and it was true, I'd be checking what my shares were to those companies year over year, and to see if money moved and did they trade on my money, because that's what I would do. But I hear what you're saying about these 10-month, procurement-driven reviews. We're close to taking a stand, and I think you talked about this. We don't have hundreds of people sitting around just waiting for a pitch to come in. I've got people working full-time on my clients' businesses, and that's what I want them focused on. I don't want them focused on a new piece of business comes in. I have to pull them, or they're working weekends or nights and dragging to work because they're working double hours on these pitches. I want the best people on my clients'
And if
businesses.
you're an incumbent, Bill, it's what?
And if you're an incumbent,
because you have to make sure the trains run.
We may take a position we're not going to pitch business anymore. I know I'm going to lose a bunch of opportunity because of that. I think clients might respect that and say, we want to come in and listen to what you have to say. I want to be known for quality of the clients that I represent and not quantity. And the dynamics have to change. And that goes back to the talent war that we're faced with in the industry right now, with the Googles and the Amazons and the Facebooks paying a lot more money for our people. We have a problem in bringing the best and the brightest and the type of data and analytics people we need today, and business solutions people to manage our clients' businesses. We should be the McKinseys of the marketing world, and it's become commoditized by what my competitors on the holding company side have been doing.
But there's another thing here. The attitude of what I call the disruptors to the disrupted, or the threatened to the threatening, is totally different. So 50% of our revenues are coming from tech. And dealing with companies whose top line are growing at 20%, the atmosphere is totally different to those companies that are scrambling for another 100 basis points, 1% increase in revenues. So we feel we are far better off working, we have a supply constraint at the minute. We're tiny, but we're growing at 45% like for like, excluding deals and everything else. So we have a supply constraint. So we think we're better to pursue a land and expand approach, which means give us a project in data or content or whatever it happens to be, or media, and let us expand the relationship. It's not agency of record, but if it de facto becomes agency of record, because if you establish a very good relationship, you then continue to build, you embed, you co-locate, you in-house and you start to build and build and build.
Well, give
That
yourself
is-
more credit, though.
Yeah.
I think the other thing you're doing, and you've said this to me enough times that I think I remember it, you said you really only care about 5 things: data, programmatic, dynamic creative, search, and I can't remember the 5th thing. But like, it's an end-to-end solution. I think the agency model, which you were one of the architects of siloing because at the time it made sense, and I think you're doing this now, has to reconstitute, because the data and math people typically end up on the media side, and I think in a world of dynamic creative, you need to have the end-to-end from the insight to the execution going through one centralized control. And the other part of this, you were talking about the disruptors, and I'm seeing this, is the consultancy and the agency. I've been a client for 30 years, 25 years a WPP client. Here's the thing. The current agency model wouldn't dare, in most cases, pass the CMO on the, in terms of anything. So everything gets filtered through the CMO's office, and I think that model worked for a while. But if you look at corporate America today, it's the CFO, the COO, and the CEO that control the company. That's where McKinsey and Accenture and Deloitte are whispering in ears saying, those marketing people don't understand attribution. They don't understand ROI. And I think one of the things that, and these two guys are exceptions, but holding companies and agencies need to up their game and have the conversation across the C-suite, not just through one eyelet, because each person in the C-suite plays a different role, and each needs a tailored message about what the strategy is. So I don't know if you...
Yeah, but it's interesting. I won't say which of the software companies, but we were talking to one of the software companies here, and we were saying...
Don't tweet that, Lisa.
Which of the holding companies actually... No, Dentsu, in this particular case, actually, Dentsu Aegis, right, on the back of the Merkle deal and Isobar. So quite interesting. They had achieved a position on B2C, so to consumer, at exactly the same level as Accenture being their biggest partner. On B2B, not, right? B2B, Accenture was Fargo. But then you say it is possible to do it. So Dentsu, Merkle, they claim as a first-party data asset. It really isn't. It isn't first-party data, but it's the best of the 3. I mean, Epsilon is a grade C. Axiom might be a B. Maybe B plus is nothing beyond that, Merkle. But the point I'm making is it is possible to pivot. But when you look at Dentsu, it's much narrower. Bill is in a much better position than any of the holding companies to pivot his business.
Yeah, and
sorry.
But, no, I just want to, since Martin's 100% correct.
For the first time in history.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
Wow.
But 30 years ago, 35 years ago, we were running our businesses. Clients came to us for one reason: business outcomes. 30 years later, that's the sole reason clients are coming for us. The difference today versus 30 years ago is you actually can affect those business outcomes through data and attribution. And clients want, and you've said this, Martin, better, faster, smarter.
Faster, better, cheaper.
And by far and away, he is proving that every day of the week with regard to how he's competing in the marketplace today with his new model. We know with a more integrated solution, I've got a hell of a lot less FTEs on a client's business than my competitors, because we're not passing the baton to 5 or 6 or 7 different companies internally, and we can do it more efficiently, we can do it more smarter. And now we're making a huge bet in content creation and experiences and brand purpose, because that goes back to, you talked about the attribution where someone knows when you need new toothpaste. Well, marketers need relationships and want relationships with their customers. And brand affinity is going to become critically important. Brand purpose, how you communicate, how you behave in the marketplace, where you show up in the marketplace is critically important. So I hate to say it's almost back unbundled in a way. We're a fully integrated solution, but smarter, faster, cheaper, more nimble, driven at the heart and the center by data and technology.
Yeah, but we're reuniting.
I want to say one thing.
Now I'm going to come back in after that.
No, shut up.
Yeah.
We're enjoying ourselves. Bugger off. We're reuniting creative and media. No, we are. But we're reuniting them on a much more level basis, because in the 90s, the creative guys, Don Draper thought corner office, Ferrari, etc. media people, they were below the salt, you know.
Yeah.
They were, so they went out and formed out their own operations.
Yeah.
But now it's even, I would say, you could even say the medium's more important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
I just want to make one point about what
Yeah.
Bill said. It's a quote. Since we're here at CES, I want to share something I learned at CES today. I was sitting in a conference room with the interminable pitches, and some 20-something came through with a really elegant idea, and his first slide was, we are not thinking machines. We are emotional machines that also think. And it really struck me about what we're talking about. What's happening is we've gotten too far down the rational side with a lot of the things that we do in programmatic, and we've gotten too far down the attribution funnel without understanding emotional context. And I just think about this one thing, because I think it's going to come full circle in data. Picture your home life. You have a significant other. You decide one day you are going to ignore all emotional signal. You are going to shut off your EQ engine, and you're just going to say what comes to mind and what you want to do, and you're going to tell that person how they actually really do look in that shirt, right? How well would that work for your home life, right? This is how we approach digital marketing every day. The single biggest exogenous variable is the emotional state of the person right now. There are a dozen companies running around here with ways to get at that, whether it's facial recognition, whether it's behavioral data, what it might be. You add this to what these guys are building. You build an emotional intelligence into it, and you start to know that receptivity for this individual is going to be in this period of time and not this period of time, right? I think that's the missing part. And that's when the math men actually add value to the creatives, because we're going to be saying, here are sets of signals to solve for, and here's what receptivity looks like, and get your EQ game on. And I think
that's what both, I mean, Bruno Lambertini, who's the head of Circus, which joined us last night or this morning, and Wesley Tahar, who's running the Media Monks, which Circus has been talk about emotional data.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is.
So that reminds me of, and I just want to let this flow for a while, but I do have questions I've been piling up as well.
When did you get here?
when are you going to work with
Can I have a beer, please? No, I'm just kidding.
Who is he?
Yeah, who's this guy? No, this is fun. No, but it reminds me of this. I went to this. Westworld, the new season's coming out at some point this year, and so HBO's been here the last night, I guess, with some promotional dinners about the show, and they did their experiential thing where they mined a bunch of data from every attendee, and then they were asking people questions throughout the thing. And I mean, I know it's a fictional show, but I feel like I'm going to combine a couple questions into one here. But the idea of is, can a company be trusted enough with all of our data to make decisions for us? And I was thinking about that when you were talking about Amazon, for example, and it comes up again with the emotional aspect. But I've been thinking a lot about the surveillance aspect as well. I've read a lot about data privacy and regulation and stuff like that. I used to wear a political reporter hat, and now I kind of try to do both. But can a company be trusted with that much data to be predictive? Because from a marketing perspective, it's great. It's direct to consumer and stuff like that. But from a governance perspective, there might not be enough controls on data to actually respect a consumer in that sense.
I think the question is a good one. I think the answer in a nutshell is yes, but not in the current ecosystem. We've got to stop what we're doing. We've got to have a transparent value exchange with consumers that goes beyond more than, you'll get more relevant ads, because that ain't it, okay? And you have to have a trust-based relationship. I know something of trust-based relationships because I'm in banking. I think it's doable. I think if everybody does one thing, read an article in the next couple months about sovereign identity. This is a movement where people are, there are a lot of, there's a company in England, Evernham, I don't know if you're probably very familiar with them, that's just doing a lot of education, and people just want control of their data. I think what we need to do as marketers is give them a feeling of real control, which includes something more than the opt-in today. How many people have ever experienced the opt-in, which is you can read these 37 pages and agree to them, or not use the device. Right. That's not an opt-in, that's a hostage negotiation.
When was the last time you didn't accept?
You have no choice. GDPR is a failed experiment. Everybody said, sure, go ahead and try, right? We've got to come out with more reasonable choices. Yeah. We've got to work as an industry to educate people, and we need to give people a real sense that they're in control of their data. And then the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah,
but we got a lot of work to do.
It's not a one size.
They have choice.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. It's about a value exchange that's meaningful, long term, that makes sense, and trust. And you go back 100 years, trust was the barometer.
But if I think, if I want to control my own data, there's an article on the front page of the FT a few months ago about a guy sitting on a London bus who, between the time he left home and got to work, had earned £1.39 from selling his data. and the bus fare was £1. So, that's where we've got to get to. So that choice is you understand what you're letting yourself in for. That's key, and then you will trust the person because you know. Or you have the option to, it's like ad supported or not, right? I'll sell my data, or if I don't want to bother with that, I'll provide it for free.
So, and thinking back about media, and you guys were talking about how everyone seems so reliant on Facebook and Google and stuff like that in terms of, it drives results, it works, who cares about the fake news, misinformation, and stuff like that, but let's just keep putting money there, right? That's what some people say. They're like, they're trying to fix it.
We heard this phrase called goofball.
Goofball?
Yeah, which means Google, Facebook, everywhere.
I kind of like that, actually. Goofball. Yeah. But I'm kind of curious, given that this is an election year and a lot of local newspapers are struggling massively, and some of the major national newspapers have been doing pretty well. But what role do brands have, thinking historically about the role of advertising with, TV companies at least? When I went to school at Missouri, there was a student newspaper there, and there was a big banner on one wall in the advertising division. It said I forget the exact quote, but it's like, the money that fuels journalism, whatever. There's something more beautiful than that was said. But I'm kind of curious, what role do brands play to help prop up the fourth estate right now versus giving money to, maybe a successful, ROI on Facebook, but it's killing journalism at the same time.
Let me start just because this is a passion project of mine. So let's go back to the Constitution, written 1788. In there, the only profession called out by name is journalism, and it has a role in the sort of checks and balances, in keeping in the First Amendment. At that time, virtually all journalism in the United States was advertising supported. Subscriptions were a concept that came into the world in the late 1600s in Western Europe, but hadn't really caught on in the United States. So implicit in the framers of the Constitution was this idea that journalism is part of our ecosystem and advertisers have a role, I would dare say have a responsibility to continue to work in that environment. Now fast forward, we're in this most divisive era. We're all worried about brand safety. 49% of our customers voted for the other person, and I mean the one in office. Sorry, please don't. And as a result, we're in this period where marketers are pulling away from advertising, and it's not just like, hey, news supporting journalism. It's not just like pulling out of news. Most marketers are using single keywords to suppress in programmatic, and some of the single keywords they're using to avoid news are Trump, president, impeachment, Pelosi, Congress. Have you watched the news lately? Right, so we're suppressing, we're actually throttling, we're throttling journalism at a time where I think in our history it's really important. It's exacerbated on the local level, where we've got a lot of markets today that have, I love the statistic, one or less newspapers serving them. Okay, one or less. So I think we're at a point where we really have to examine this particular environment. And the last thing I will say, in the research that we've done, person in the back of the room, the news audience is 6 times more likely to recall your ad and 5 times more likely to engage with your ad than a primetime audience. So there's a value here if you can do the hard work of ensuring brand safety, and I think there's a role here for marketers to support journalism. So I'm probably on the extreme end of the conversation.
Does that mean the Bank of America is going to do that?
We are spending 30 cents out of every digital dollar in news, and it is hard. It is hard from a brand safety perspective, and I've got 3 people who work on that full time now. Which, when I started in this job, I would have never, thought about that. So it's hard, but and we're doing it because there's good value there. There's good audience engagement there. We're not doing it because we're on some mission. There's good value to be had.
My guess is that you're blacklisted from a lot of sites that maybe, and again, I don't know how you've set up your brand safety standards, but through machine learning, there's an awful lot of actual good content that is not being supported because of certain connotations and how those filters are being set up, and it's hurting some publishers out there because of it. On the other side of the coin, you have to have some of those stringent standards set up because you don't want the backlash of all these consumers. Why did you run here and there? So it's a lot of work. It's an awful lot of work. There are a lot of other places, what Lou talked about in terms of engagement, he's right. In the news, you can reach this constituency in a lot of other places as well. We've had certain clients that have said we don't want to be associated, and they've backed out, and it hasn't hurt their business. We have had certain clients that say we only want to run in these segments on these kind of editorial comments. And we have others that have stayed in and feel very strong about it. It's not a one-size-fits-all. I'm concerned about the ML and the ramifications of certain publications and publishers being eliminated because of just a word connotation.
Yeah.
And
Single
that's
keyword.
what's-
Single keyword.
Lou's argument is based on, goes back to the Constitution. So it's a 200 or 300-year-old argument. And with all due respect, I think this is a bubble conversation. So this is a conversation that plays well on the East Coast or the West Coast. I was looking at a heat map of America in 2016, the presidential election. The heat map measuring the degree to which there was a shift to the Republicans, red, as opposed to Democratic, blue. And there's a little thin sliver of blue on the left-hand side and a thin sliver of blue on the right-hand side. The stuff in the middle is red. And Trump will remain president of this country.
Heard it here first.
Right? Yeah. And in Britain, look at what was the slogan in the election? Get Brexit done. That was it. Finished. And look at the majority. Unprecedented. You have to go back to the 1930s, I think it is, to see. So attention spans have been shortened. Even my media habits are less Buffettian and more Trumpian now.
Oh, you have a
I
child.
look at more visual, less reading. Yeah, I could deplore it at one level, but you see, I think Lou, life has changed, and I think what we fail to acknowledge, and that's one of the problems that.
I'm talking about journalism. I'm talking about what channel it comes in, Martin.
But this is not what that stuff in the middle of America or in the north of England, the Labour voters who went and voted Conservative, are worried about. It's not. We are so distant from that. We've lost the understanding of that. And I don't think, I disagree. I think the nature of communication has changed to such a vast degree to when your beloved Constitution was written that we have to change our view of it. And I think
So I don't disagree with that, but do you think anti-vaxxers should have a voice because they believe vaxxers, people who don't believe in vaccination against, we shouldn't try to educate them because they have their belief set. Is that your argument?
It's not an argument. I'm just saying that people are entitled to their view. They can
Absolutely,
express it.
but
they
they're
can
entitled to be
express it in a way.
informed.
And I don't think that people are that foolish. I think people know when they turn on a news channel or read a newspaper or whatever it is that they have a certain bias.
So back to the local point, which is interesting, just anecdotal, I started my career in newspapers in Birmingham, Alabama, very red, blue city, red state. And it was always interesting. People would trust the local paper because they maybe sometimes knew those journalists. Like newspapers in general, especially in the middle of the country, have more of a blue collar feel to the workers versus on the coast, most journalists on either coast or Ivy Leaguers, except for myself, Mizzou, public school. But I think it's interesting thinking about the media that's being hurt the most are the local papers where maybe even in the center of the country, people still trust them more than they would, say, like a CNN or a Fox News. And so I mean, that's a really good point.
I think,
yeah,
but they're being hurt because you can get news 24/7, locally, nationally, anywhere you want, without the printed page, ad supported, and that's why those papers are dying, because the ability to get news on the second, when you want it, up to the minute, wherever you want it, and that's why those local hard copy papers are going out of business.
But you still need a local news function.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Digital targeting at some of these places is really bad. So it makes sense. Like, there's not the investment there. I know the Washington Post has been doing a lot when it comes to building up their ad tech stack, but it seems like a lot of the other places in the country are still lacking.
We're just trying to hammer home the point. 2-second ads work, right? So Facebook comes out with this insight that on average women, and I might be men too, spend 1.7 seconds looking at a post. So what does Media Monks do in response to that? 2-second ads. So the nature of the game, if I can put it that way, has changed. And it's our unwillingness to acknowledge it. Like, it's the holding companies, right? I ran one for I was unwilling to acknowledge it people inside our organization was unwilling to acknowledge it. Clients were unwilling to acknowledge it. It's changed. And we're starting to see, I think, the beginning of that. In this decade, I hope, obviously I have a vested interest, but I hope that we'll see that accelerate.
So moving on from just the local news side of things, I know the topic's the future of media investment. This week there's been a lot of talk about Quibi and Peacock and a lot of the streaming stuff. What are your thoughts on spending there this year? Is it appealing?
You got to hear Bill's rap on this.
Jesus. So these guys missed the boat. They let Netflix in the door years ago. Big mistake. Never should have put them in business. They put them in business. Look where Netflix is today. So now all of them are jumping on the streaming service bandwagon. You have Quibi, you have HBO Max, you've got Peacock, you've got Amazon's platform, you've got CBS All Access, BET subscriptions. Everybody's coming out with a subscription service. The massive, and they're spending billions of dollars in advertising now, marketing those subscription services with Disney Plus. Obviously, I forgot them out there as well. Billions of dollars of marketing against those services. Number one, there's a finite amount of services that each one of us are going to subscribe to. Number two, it is going to suck the wind out of traditional linear TV. I believe it's going to drop significantly. It's been dropping, but I think over the next 24 months, we're going to see an enormous, significant drop in probably 40 to 45%. I believe that in certain day parts, absolutely.
When you say linear, are you saying legacy?
Legacy cable, traditional broadcast.
Linda Eckern is right back there.
Yeah, is Linda here? Yeah,
No.
You're going to see now.
See
It's
that?
true. No, listen, but Comcast has jumped in a big way
Yeah.
with
They've got a better model.
with Peacock. In some ways, they're marching to their own funeral because they now all have gone into this game, and I think there are going to be some big losers in this. The other piece is where are marketers going to go with the impressions aren't going to be there in the marketplace to buy. Obviously, the digital ecosystem and OTT is going to become more and more important in terms of what we do. Live sports are going to become critically important. And it's going to change the entire dynamic of the way traditional TV was bought and sold in the past because the inventory is going to be so scarce in terms of available impressions out there. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a very scary landscape. I also believe that they're going to become ad-supported.
They have to
Netflix
maintain
will
revenue growth.
become ad-supported.
Marketing
They're already
supported.
out there doing it, marketing supported in
It's
a
already
different way.
product placement.
Quibi went out there, with 10 grandfathered advertisers. There's no way that, listen, I applaud what Katzenberg is doing. I'm actually very bullish on what Quibi's going to be based on if he delivers on the content. But the cost to produce that content is going to be enormous. They can't survive on $150 million of ad revenue from these key, premier sponsors that they have out there. They're going to become marketing supported. So it's going to come back around. It's going to become marketing supported that way. But what we grew up on, never going to be the same.
Don't discount what Comcast is doing. They're zigging when everybody else is zagging. They're using their set-top box subscription model and as the monetization engine, and they're allowing people to actually install the streaming Peacock service. So they still have their revenue stream over here. And at some point, the tipping point will go to the streaming side, and they'll just migrate the billing from the set-top box. So they have an exodus strategy. I mean, they're getting the people out of Egypt. And I think that's going to give them an interesting leg up on other models.
Listen, they had no choice to go in this direction. Right. They absolutely had to. The question is, is Netflix going to
They have to go to ad-supported.
survive this or not?
How are they going to survive on
Correct.
on pricing?
Yeah.
I agree with Bill directionally, but I don't think it'll be quite as violent as that. But I don't think this is newspapers. You're saying it's newspapers. I don't think it's quite. It'll be, I think, steady erosion over a significant period of time.
Hey, Bill, what happens when one of the big tech guys with more money than all the linear guys together buys that live sports? What happens then?
First of all, I don't think that. I think that like take CBS, which is up for renew in 2 years. CBS will pay whatever they need to keep that. I think the other broadcast guys will as well. If it goes that way, then there's a big concern. It's basically free. Are people going to have to pay for that? I think there could be a backlash there. So I don't think that's going to. I don't foresee within the next 10 years the NFL being solely on a tech platform.
But haven't they done a good job keeping that one outsider and keeping one guy out and bringing in? If they bring in one of those guys,
Yeah.
Camel's nose under the tent. How fast does
If
that
league,
drive it down?
if Richie, if league sports is lost, those platforms will fail. So I think they will spend until they can't. Just look at the production budgets that Netflix is taking into the marketplace now. I mean, what was it like last year? It was like $19 billion or something. At some point, their ability to buy league sports is going to exceed, I think, the current incumbent's ability to match. I don't know if that's 2 years or 10 years, but at some point, there's going to be more money.
You did see it in India on the Premier League. You saw Facebook.
Formula One in Britain.
Come very, very close to star. I mean, we were Group M in India were monitoring that. We were advising on that auction at the time, and it was just fractional. I mean, so fractional that one wondered quite how Star bid the price that they bid. I think the tipping point is coming on that, because I think the tech platforms will be very aggressive on that, and whether CBS can defend, even with its CBS and
CBS is
Viacom.
in the weakest position to defend, but the risk of not getting it, big time. And it all depends. If Amazon steps up to the plate and writes some enormous check,
The other thing,
Ball game's over.
Don't forget the leagues with the
Ball game's
way
over.
The salaries,
Yep.
salary caps are done. The players want
Yep,
to maximize.
of course they do.
Yeah.
Of
But
course they
I'm
do.
on the IOC. We have our meeting in Lausanne in next week, and on communications. And the interesting thing on the Olympics, the IOC have always gone long. They've gone very long. I try and remember they've gone out to 28 or 32, whatever it is. But when it comes again, the pressure will be that you will segment the rights. It's not going to be, I'm going to let you have everything. It's the bid I got from Facebook or Google or wherever it happens to Apple or whatever is so high, I'm going to go with them on streaming rights or whatever it is.
Bill, all that pressure on television, what are the benefits of platforms? What platforms will benefit?
You specifically the platform of television?
No, John, he's saying with the demise of traditional, what other platforms are going to benefit? And obviously, I think that audio, Mr. Sykes, audio was always a great social platform. It continues to be, and I think that streaming audio and traditional terrestrial audio is also going to have a really nice resurgence for two reasons. One, the cost of traditional TV is going to go skyrocketed because of limited supply. And when we're now buying audiences, and I can reach those same audiences on audio for a much cheaper price than I can reach that on traditional linear with the prices in terms of where I think they're going to go, then audio is going to be a natural place for me to go. If we can prove out, goes back to business outcomes, it's got to drive those business outcomes. But I actually see a really bright future, and Mr. Pittman was really smart to restructure the company, which is, in terms of what he recently did, because they got rid of that $14 billion in debt, and now I think you're going to see some nice increases and upticks in business. I really do. I really do.
I want to build on one thing here,
Yeah.
because there's a fundamental, there's the entertainment audio, which I think will grow and has always been good value, and we know that with the advent of driverless cars, 37% more content consumption in the automobile because there'll be less distraction, more time to enjoy iHeart, more time to enjoy other things. It's also going to drive more search, and it's going to be audio search. There are some studies that say by the end of this year we could see 1 in 2 searches happening in audio. I don't think it's going to happen that rapidly, but just remember, this is the most fundamental dynamic change we've seen in the industry. For 60 years, marketers created a stimulus, put it in front of an audience, and waited for the consumer to respond. Now, consumers are saying, this is what I need, and we have a couple of milliseconds to get the right answer through the Google algorithm, satisfy the need, and drive the down funnel outcome. We built assembly lines to serve campaigns, and now we have to be agile marketers to serve the consumer's need like this, or we're going to get disintermediated all the time. So there's a lot going on in audio. It's not as black and white.
And I think the streaming services, because they will become ad supported, are going to benefit tremendously. I mean, I thought it was really interesting the position that Netflix took with The Irishman, where they couldn't make the deal with the exhibitors in terms of how long they were going to keep the film in the theaters, and it went to Netflix, right? Much quicker. The viewership that The Irishman had on Netflix was what, equivalent to, Amy, you probably know the number in terms of what the opening would have been. It was through the roof. So why won't more film companies eventually go that route? Netflix will pay a studio, for the movie.
And the fact that
de-risk it.
Scorsese did it,
That helped.
And the fact he doesn't want to see people to see his films on a screen which has got thumbprints all over it. But the fact that he went with it indicates where it's going to go.
Bill, do you think if the streaming services then have the first-party relationship with the consumer, that's going to advantage them much stronger than the traditional platforms that had to go through a cable distributor that didn't really have
Right, to get the information.
How do you take advantage of that as an agency?
Well, first of all, will they be walled or not walled? Number one, right? So I hope not. Yeah, of course, we don't want it to be. And if that's, of course they do. They have purchase data. They got real ID data. We're talking to real individuals, real people.
We've seen it already. I mean, the Netflix campaigns that we do. So Narcos 3, they give us the masters. We cut it up into pieces. We create 1.6 for the Narcos 3. We created 1.6 million potential executions. We watch what you do from this, the Netflix first-party data, the signals from Google and Amazon and everybody else, Facebook, and we serve you. You're on WallStreetJournal.com. We serve you a film which compares Narcos 3 to a business. We serve you're on a fitness site. We compare it to a fitness program. It's already personalization at scale. Sorry?
Will that get you to attribution better with real first-party data?
Yes.
Absolutely. But look at what Disney Plus on an addressable basis right now are sending a different message to lose home for him to sign up to Disney Plus versus me. And the traditional linear TV guys are allowing them to do that. That's going to suck viewership away. It's back to the Netflix model. Why would I give them my programming and put me out of business? It's Groundhog's Day all over again.
To that point, Rich, it's the same thing we were doing 30 years ago. Who owns the last mile, right? It's going to be the pipe that people come in on, and whoever's be able to put a tax on that pipe, whether it's Netflix or whoever, I think people are going to curate through one platform. John, just go back to your question. I will tell you.
Sorry, Richie, I'm going to jump in here for a second.
The other platform that I'm really excited about, and what's old is new again, maybe. We are all in on Twitter. We are seeing tremendous success with Twitter. It's time to start.
What's the ad revenues on Twitter?
Who cares? You know what?
No, they do care. Sorry.
Okay, I'm personally saying from a platform perspective, and you guys use it very well too, because I see a lot of it at your events, how you partner with it. It is a great way to connect with audiences now, and I really suggest taking another look at that platform. Don't keep grouping them in a walled garden. They're different.
So what about
Marketers ever lay down their swords and work together and come up with a common way to allow you to reach a household? Because they're going to get killed every day.
That'll be, pride goeth before the fall.
I've been in the tech industry for 30 years, and I created digital TV way back when, and we launched DirecTV, and we're now at a new era in the 2020s, right? So this idea of a direct-to-consumer platform is going to take a new form, and it doesn't have to be just from Google, Facebook, etc. Because you're looking at, and we're building one, right, with Luxoft. So we're building a mobile-first immersive media platform that's going to be a Web 3.0 platform, much more spatial, much more transactional. It'll have a whole new energy for advertising in terms of, contextual advertising, immersive advertising.
It's content platform.
Content,
And data backhaul.
You'll have your own data. It will be self-sovereign data underneath it. It will have a customer data platform, probably Salesforce. And these new platforms will emerge at scale so that people can have their own web app, so you can discover it using your own social links instead of searching for it and being beholden to the big guys. And I think there's a whole new universe. Instead of Quibi saying, hey, we're doing short form mobile first, come to our platform, we're doing a subscription model. These are going to be free to play, leaning into the monetization model of games, mobile games, and having mobile advertising as the key driver.
When will that be
transactions,
deployed?
and commerce.
When do you think you'll be in market with that?
This year.
Really?
Yeah. Well, the advantage Quibi has,
Congratulations.
but I got to tell you, the advantage that
You guys, and I think you're all really right, and it's so refreshing because in the tech space, we're all the Hollywood studios are just moving to over the top because it's what they have in front of them. It's not distribution has to be reinvented, and it's not looking back at the cable market, it's looking forward to mobile.
Well, it's actually, you know, you got to look at the telco world and the telco influence in terms of distribution and their platforms, and that's why, you know, Verizon has hooked up with Disney Plus, T-Mobile has hooked up with Quibi, Peacock is going to have a partner. So you need a big telco. You need a big telco distribution
And
partner.
actually, we're doing that. So we're talking to T-Mobile, all the carriers all over the world, even in Asia, they're really looking at short-form, microtransactional content that really.
Yeah.
Will you go to a
And-
mobile OS?
and-
Would you go to a mobile OS in that
Yes,
scenario?
well, we don't have to reinvent the mobile OS, but what we have is as a web app, you don't have to lean into the App Store. So Google and Apple have less control over the 30% on
Yeah.
transactions.
And by the way, I want linear TV to survive. I'd hate to see my prediction come through. I just don't think it's a good thing. You know who the largest advertisers on TV are today?
Google,
Google,
Facebook.
Facebook, Amazon, all these digital players, the largest advertisers on TV. You know why?
Because they have the best attribution model.
Works.
Right.
So what about
And they know it.
So speaking of the walled gardens, and like besides those, but so some people say Roku is kind of the new walled garden. Like, do you guys agree with that? And then there's, I know OpenAP is trying to do some stuff there. Not the walled gardens. They're trying to pull this data together, but leave things open for everybody. But is Roku the new walled garden, or on the audio side, is Amazon going to become the audio walled garden?
The audio, Amazon, the audio world.
Well, you're going to have all
Thinking more
that
about
first-party
search,
data
you know,
coming
like
in.
voice
Yeah,
and search,
yeah.
One other thing, John, podcasts.
Hey, you
Very,
guys have
very
heard of them, right?
progressive
The world's largest
platform
podcast
that's
guy.
gaining a huge amount of traction as well.
My 18-year-old son, in the morning going to work, going to school, listens.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, my
Yep.
18-year-old daughter, they basically,
Yeah.
we'd say, why would you listen to audio while they're glued to it?
Who's the number one podcast platform? I can't remember.
That's Bob.
I don't know enough about the Roku data sharing right now. I've not heard that we've got, I don't know, Aaron, maybe you know that? The Roku side?
I'm being told from the back of the room, no, they're not sharing data from the man who knows. So thank you,
Okay.
Dan.
No.
Thank you.
not.
You want to?
Okay.
No. All right.
Well, they're not sharing it with Lou. I think they probably are with us.
Tom Malone talked, he gave his annual CNBC report on media. He talked about this nuclear arms race. He said someone's going to be smart, someone's going to be the bundler, someone's going to be the curator. He pointed to Amazon. What do you guys think about who could step up and be the curator with all these choices? Kind of like when we're all getting into cable, we needed someone to curate all these choices. Who will step out and will it be a business?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Curate with all these choices of Disney Plus, of
Next best,
Hulu.
yeah, the Apple TV app.
It's you open up the closet, everything falls out.
Right.
Charlie Palmer's thing.
Discovery is a real problem right now.
So there's going to be a business for someone.
Yeah,
Right.
$1 billion business.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I don't.
The Apple TV app, which is inside the Apple TV box, attempts to do that, and it's a little creepy right now because it's literally, I don't know if it's ACR or what it's using, but it knows everything I watch, and it's being predictive. People will want curation that's much more sophisticated than we have today. I think a few years ago, who was it? Comcast, the thing that starts with the V. I can't think of it. Comcast they had a really interesting model that I thought was good, but it didn't seem to go anywhere. I think there's going to be really, really great curation that you'll pay a subscription for, and there probably will be things like avatars, like I'm like this person or I'm like that person. You combine that and my viewing history, and Julia will come on at 7 o'clock at night and say, here are the things that you should be watching today. So but that is a big business, and it's probably a subscription model. It's not a value add.
So Lou, I think, isn't the creepiness of retargeting, which led to, over the last 10 years, to some of these privacy issues? You're now talking about, now this goes into your content.
This is the
Don't you
value
think
exchange.
privacy matters?
This is the value exchange. You let your doctor diagnose what's wrong with you, so maybe you're going to get to a model where you let your entertainment system diagnose what's right with you.
And we're talking to the wrong people in this room. Go talk to the 18 to 24-year-olds.
They have no
Go
issue.
talk to the future, consumers of the future. They have a much lesser issue than we do, because they know who to trust, they know who they're comfortable with, they understand the value exchange, and I don't think they're going to have a problem. They actually look at it as a convenience, as opposed to hey, you're sniffing around my backyard here. It's really interesting that the different mindset.
What about the casinos, though? Potentially
No, they've got chipsets. They got Samba TV's got 37 million chipsets inside there that are doing the same thing. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys.
I mean, same thing. Sorry, a sleep number bed that knows your health. I actually think they're not going to share it, but someone else has that information. It's pretty interesting.
Wasn't there a big thing recently? I forget which health company it was, but they were using health data on Facebook. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I forget I'm blanking the company, but it was a big issue probably like 2 weeks ago. People were wondering if
the facial recognition.
No, it wasn't facial recognition. It was looking at like it was like a pharmaceutical company, I think. I don't remember which one it was, but I don't know.
Don't you think you've got HIPAA protection? Don't you
Yes,
think that
correct, you
there
do.
needs to be stronger laws or rules or regulations before this gets out of hand if they are taking
Yes, absolutely.
Stronger regulation
Absolutely.
on what?
And data
I'm
privacy.
not quite sure on data privacy
Yeah.
and around the privacy. And I think the reason you're seeing, there was a privacy law for 10 years in Europe, just nobody did anything. GDPR just put a fine on it and made it accountable. There wasn't.
Yeah, but
anything
GDPR
new.
has done nothing other than
But
reinforce
my point was,
the.
I think it was reaction
No.
to the-
No, I think what you've got to do is you've got to get it in a position where Google, Facebook, and Amazon, using those three, maybe Tencent, Alibaba, self-regulate. You have to create the pressure on them. And we've had meetings here with Google, Facebook, tomorrow with Amazon, and from my interactions, and these are private interactions, these are not public stuff, and they're subject to sort of external scrutiny, if you like. I think the degree of responsibility that they're taking on is very significant. And I think we underestimate that. It's politically fashionable to attack them. I mean, the irony in a British context is we should be welcome, Brexit, we should be I'm not a Brexiteer, I'm a Remainer, but given where we are and we're coming out, we should be encouraging those companies to come to the UK. We should be lowering corporate tax, we should make it regulation light, we should make it their homes. But we should put pressure on them, social pressure on them, political pressure, to behave in a more responsible manner. And they are. I mean, I think they're an easy target.
Yeah.
They're an easy Warren political
I
target.
agree with that. It's a victimless crime to criticize these companies and sell fear. I think the problem is right now there's too much cotton candy. People are confused by it all. We need a stick to wrap it around. We need legislation at a national level. We joined Privacy for America this year, and if you're a marketer in this room, I would encourage you to get involved.
Do you think you will get a federal?
I think I can't avoid trying, and I think that
But you think it's a fruitless task?
Well, I don't think it's a fruitless task. I mean, we've passed a uniform commercial code in this country 60 years ago, and 49 states, one being Louisiana that doesn't, follow one code for commerce. I think we have to try, because otherwise there's going to be 7 different laws in 7 different states that are not going to allow us to really use data to create more relevant content for consumers to compete for their attention. And so we've got to work on this. And I think if we can tell the American people that there's a law and we comply with it, and if a third party can say that's a good law, we have a stick to wrap all the cotton candy and say, look, whatever we're doing, it's compliant with the law, and we're doing the things we need to do. Without that, self-regulation is excellent for our industry, but it doesn't sell to people the belief that we are storing their data in a way that they expect. And that's the shortfall of self-regulation.
It won't happen at federal level. It's difficult, impossible to get it through.
Well, I know there have been a couple.
I bet you it's 2 years.
Okay, you're up.
24 months.
You're
All
up.
right.
And we have a bet on
1%.
the 40 to 45%.
1% of our net worth. 1% of each other's respective net worth, okay? I got about $30 for you.
Yeah. Well, I know there have been a couple bills that have gone up that are bipartisan. I know that Amy Klobuchar had a bill that was in Congress. There's another one that Senator Cantwell just introduced. There's another one that I know the P4A is working on. PFA, same thing. Yeah. What would it what would you guys like to see in that legislation? And I'm kind of curious also too, as as the Londoner here, what do you think would you love to see in a U.S. piece of legislation?
In relation to privacy?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's what we discussed before, the transparency, simplicity in terms of accept or reject, transparency in consumer. The fundamental thing is the consumer understanding precisely what he or she is letting themselves in for. So it's
In a simple way.
In a simple way.
Yeah.
So it's like the language, when I remember when I was at the WPP early days, Siegel, it's actually such as Siegel and Gale simplified the language on a customs form. You know, when you came into the country, it was very complex, a 3-page form. They just simplified the language and made it very quick and easy to do. I mean, it's a bizarre analogy, but simply doing that.
It's
Simple
exactly
language.
right. The lawyer should not be writing the copy on the new Apple terms and conditions, right? You've got to get a marketer to write it. You've got to make it fit in this screen, and you got to use kitchen English. And then you can link to the full legal terms and conditions.
If you want it.
We need to engage people. We need to get involved, and we need to exert their right to choose this sovereign identity thing. And then they'll feel like, you know what, I made the choice. And I know what I signed up for. And we need to be accountable to that. But it starts with not giving them 40 pages of legalese that none of us really want to read, to be honest. How many of us, and we're in this business, have really read the terms and conditions of anything, including our own website, right?
I think Snap did a good job of that, though. I think they did a really good job simplifying.
It reminds me of
TCs.
CMOs who never read their
contracts.
agency
Their
contracts
agency
with their
contracts.
media companies.
Snap's going to have a filter that's going to
That's
go
right.
over 36 pages.
Yeah. And it's a great AI business, right? Like, this is what this actually means. You're fucked here, you're good here. So don't tweet that.
It's a great quote, though.
No.
I don't know how we're doing on time.
We're way over.
We're probably over. Yeah.
If you have to run, then I don't want to.
Can
Yeah.
we just take a couple more questions from the audience? Because I think that was,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm just on autopilot at this
That's
point.
because Richie has dominated.
Yeah.
By the way, Richie Glassberg, Safeguard Privacy. Check out what he's doing. It's
Yep.
really important in this conversation.
Good man.
So.
Thank you. Don't tweet that Lou said this is fun.
And if you have any radio money, give it to John Sykes.
Yeah.
He's already got all mine.
Anybody have a question over there? Yeah? No? Just smiling. Okay. It's a good panel.
Nobody else?
Everyone's ready for drinks, I think. Do we
Come
have
on, Amy. What do you think?
So what's your final question?
Final question. Might as well do one more.
Okay, I have a biggest opportunity in 2020.
But I was going to say actually 2030 as well. So maybe both, yeah. So 2020 and 2030, like looking at a decade out.
2030.
Yeah. So, I like that, yeah.
The eclipse of the traditional holding companies, the rise of the new model.
Yeah.
Decade, over the next decade.
And I think understanding that the client-agency relationship has changed forever, and there's a bunch of people that want to put the genie back in the bottle and think it was yesterday, and that's never going to be the case ever again. This is marketers have hired many smarter people on their side of the business today. They're taking ownership of their business today better than ever before, and the relationship is one of collaboration. You've done a good job with S4 in terms of educating clients in terms of their own data platforms and what Mighty Hive has done. And understanding that and knowing where you can add value in the relationship and not try to own every single piece, which is what the holding companies are trying to do, is where the world is going. And the talent that's needed to do that and how those relationships operate are night and day from where they were. And those who understand it, I think, are going to win, and those that don't are going to stubbornly get hurt.
Yeah, and there are
that's
two
hard.
big faults with.
Wait, can I get to mine before you build on it? No. I'll be brief. I think the 2020 opportunity is dynamic content optimization, DCO. If you don't know the acronym, I think in 2030 it's going to be identity as a service, and I think it's going to be a networked model. Look at M-Pesa in Africa and Safari Ventures, which owns them. They flipped from being a bank to being an identity platform in which they're bringing other banks and insurance companies and everybody else onto, and it's speed to market like you can't believe. So identity as a service in 2030, DCO in 2020. Those are mine.
Two things on the agency relationships is this agencies worry about two things. One is somebody else talking to their clients. So not being worried about that is critically important. And then incumbency. The traditional holding companies are so worried about losing business. I mean, that's the phenomenon of people talking to their clients. They think they're going to lose the business. It may well be that all people want to do is to put their idea in front of them so that the client can go through the agency. It may not be competitive. But being comfortable about in-housing, for example, that it doesn't do you out of your job, but if it's in the interest of the clients, that you do it. The other thing I would just sort of mention, I think this decade we'll see, the biggest problem as I see it is the lack of relationship between the US and China, which are the two biggest economies in the world. It's roughly half of worldwide GDP. And if those two countries can't, it's basically, I'm sorry to say this as a visitor to America, but it's the American unwillingness to accept the rise of China that is the fundamental problem. With that, China will become, well, it already is, competitive, if not superior in some areas. You know, Schwarzman puts 150 million or whatever it is into MIT on AI because he's worried that the Chinese are going to get ahead on AI, and I think they are. The one area of semiconductor technology is where they haven't got equality or ascendancy, but I think China will be such a force in this decade from a technological point of view. What you see with the ByteDance is truly remarkable. It's an $85 billion private company in a nanosecond, really. It's just in a few years. And TikTok has been the phenomenon this year, and I think will continue.
Cool. I think we're done. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.